Two more short stories. Two more short stories. The Jest of the Gods. Once the older gods had need of laughter. Therefore they made the soul of a king and set in it ambitions greater than kings should have, and lust for territories beyond the lust of other kings. And in this soul they set strength beyond the strength of others, and fierce desire for power, and a strong pride. Then the gods pointed earthward and sent that soul into the fields of men to live in the body of a slave. And the slave grew, and the pride and lust for power began to arise in his heart, and he wore shackles on his arms. Then in the fields of twilight the gods prepared to laugh. But the slave went down to the shore of the great sea, and cast his body away and the shackles that were upon it, and strode back to the fields of twilight, and stood up before the gods, and looked them in their faces. This thing the gods, when they had prepared to laugh, had not foreseen. This thing the gods, when they had prepared to laugh, had not foreseen. Lust for power burned strong in that king's soul, and there was all the strength and pride in it that the gods had placed therein, and he was too strong for the older gods. He whose body had borne the lashes of men could brook no longer the domination of the gods, and standing before them he bade the gods to go. Up to their lips leapt all the anger of the older gods, being for the first time commanded. But the king's soul faced them still, and their anger died away, and they averted their eyes. Then their thrones became empty, and the fields of twilight bare, as the gods slunk away. But the soul chose new companions. Night and morning. Night and morning. Once, in an arbor of the gods above the fields of twilight, Night, wandering alone, came suddenly on morning. And then Night drew from his face his cloak of dark grey mists, and said, "See, I am Night." And they two, sitting in that arbor of the gods, Night told wondrous stories of old mysterious happenings in the dark. And Morning sat and wondered, gazing into the face of Night and at his wreath of stars. And Morning told how the rains of Namathris smoked in the plain. But Night told I'm going to have to figure out how to pronounce that name. Excuse me for just a moment. We're going to go the spelling of this word, this name, this lofty name is Snamarthis. 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 I think that's it. Or Samarthis. Samarthis. I like Samarthis. Let's start again. Night and morning. Once, in an arbor of the gods above the fields of twilight, Night, wandering alone, came suddenly on morning. Then Night drew from his face his cloak of dark grey mists and said, "See, I am Night." And they two, sitting in that arbor of the gods, Night told wondrous stories of old mysterious happenings in the dark, and Morning sat and wondered, gazing into the face of Night and at his wreath of stars. And Morning told how the rains of Snamarthus smoked in the plain, but Night told how Snamarthus held riot in the dark, with revelry and drinking and tales told by kings, till all the hosts of Minnith crept against it, and the lights went out, and there arose the din of arms over Morning. And Night told how Sindana, the beggar, had dreamed that he was a king, and Morning told how she had seen Sindana suddenly find an army in the plain, and how he had gone to thinking it. And he had. On we go. And Night told how Sindana, the beggar, had dreamed that he was a king, and Morning told how she had seen Sindana find suddenly an army in the plain, and how he had gone to it thinking he was king, and the army had believed him, and Sindana now ruled over Marthas and Taragrides, Denith, Zan, and Tumida. And most Night loved to tell of Asarnes, whose ruins are scant memories on the desert's edge, but Morning told of the twin cities of Nardis and Tiamut that lorded over the plain. And Night told terribly of what Mynandes found when he walked through his own city in the dark, and ever at the elbow of regal Night whispers arose, saying, "Tell Morning this." And ever Night told, and ever Morning wondered, and Night spake on and told what the dead had done when they came in the darkness on the king that had led them into battle once. And Night knew who slew Darnex and how it was done. Moreover, he told why the seven kings tortured Sidrathrius, and what Sidrathrius said just at the last, and how the kings went forth and took their lives. Night told whose blood had stained the marble steps that led to the temple of Ozan, and why the skull within it wears a golden crown, and whose soul of Ozan, and why the skull within it wears a golden crown, and whose soul is in the wolf that howls in the dark against the city. And Night knew whither the tigers go out of the Irisian desert, and the place where they meet together, and who speaks to them, and what she says and why. And he told why human teeth had bitten the iron hinge in the great gate that swings in the walls of Mondus, and who came up out of the marsh alone in the dark time and demanded audience of the king, and told the king a lie, and how the king, believing it, went down into the vaults of his palace and found only toads and snakes, who slew the king. Night told of ventures in palace towers in the quiet, and knew the spell whereby a man might send the light of the moon right into the soul of his foe. And Night spoke of the forest and the stirring of shadows and soft feet pattering and peering eyes, and of the fear that sits between the trees, taking itself the shape of something crouched to spring. But far under the arbor of the gods, down on the earth, the mountain peak Mondana looked morning. Try that again. But far under that arbor of the gods, down on the earth, the mountain peak Mondana looked morning in the eyes of in the mountain peak Mordana. Okay, so Mondana is being personified here. Got it now. On we go. But far under that arbor of the gods, down on the earth, the mountain peak, Mondana, looked morning in the eyes and forsook his allegiance to Night. And one by one the lesser hills about Mondana's knees greeted the morning, and all the while in the plains the shapes of cities came looming out of the dusk. And Congros stood forth with all her pinnacles, and the winged creature of Posi, carved upon the eastern portal of her gate, and the squat figure of Avarice carved facing it upon the west. And the bat began to tire. And the bat began to tire of going up and down her streets, and already the owl was home. And the dark lions went up out of the plain back to their caves again. Not as yet shone any dew upon the spider's snare, nor came the sound of any insect stirring or bird of the day, and full allegiance all the valleys owed still to their lord the night. Yet earth was preparing for another ruler, and kingdom by kingdom she stole away from night, and there marched through the dreams of men a million heralds that cried with the voice of the cock, "Lo! Morning come behind us." But in that arbor of the gods, above the fields of twilight, the star wreath was paling about the head of night, and ever more wonderful on morning's brow appeared the mark of power. And at the moment when the campfires pale and the smoke goes grey to the sky and camels sniff the dawn, suddenly morning forgot night, and out of that arbor of the gods and away to the haunts of the dark, night with his swart cloak slunk away, and morning placed her hand upon the mists and drew them upward and revealed the earth, and drove the shadows before her, and they followed night. And suddenly the mystery quitted haunting shapes, and an old glamour was gone, and far and wide over the fields of earth a new splendor arose. That's it for this evening. I will read more later this week. Until next time, safe travels and peace.